Have you ever dreamt of a better version of yourself? Younger, more beautiful, more perfect. One single injection unlocks your DNA, starting a new cellular division that will release another version of yourself. This is the substance.
Yeah, this is the substance. First off, let's just say right off the bat, I have no idea who Coralie Fargeat is, except that this is a second feature after a film called Revenge that came out about 5 or 6 years ago that I never got a chance to see, and it was roundly heralded as a woman revenge kind of take back kind of story. It's supposed to be pretty good. I don't know. I had heard a lot of things about this film, and when I went into it, admittedly, I went into it with a very closed mind, a very prejudicial attitude that comes with life. You know, there's a certain, I've said it a number of times on this show, there's a certain level of baggage that you carry into a movie, into a viewing, and that's very apparent with this one. We talked a little bit about this in one of the last episodes that we did last week, our Creep Show episode, where we didn't want to end the Halloween season on a bad note, so we wanted to look forward to something that would possibly grab a hold of us. And this was a film that you suggested. I had heard about it, but I made it very clear in that conversation that it was going to fall into a subject matter that I not only don't necessarily care about, but more along the lines, the closed-mindedness of it, on my part, was such that I was very dismissive. White woman problems. And I'm seeing the movie 2 days ago for the first time in a theater, and I watched it again this morning because I don't know that I have ever seen a film like this that was so basic and obvious and boring to me, only to have it turn around at the end and be one of the great movie watching experiences of the last few years. And that's not to say that the experience of it was so great. What I'm talking about is the fact that this movie goes to such ridiculous lengths in its last 20-25 minutes that I was just on board, laughing my ass off, having a great time with it, and seemingly forgetting about my opinion of it the previous 2 hours. Now, that being said, watching it again this morning, and knowing what I was looking forward to, my feelings about the film and its first 2 hours were amplified. I was bored to an even greater degree. And I kept thinking to myself, there were a number of thoughts that went through my head. I was like, what am I watching? Am I watching a fucking bad Twilight Zone episode? Am I watching a chick fight club? What is this? What are they trying to do? There was never a point in that first 2 hours where there were any surprises in where the story was going. I saw every fucking plot development, everything in it. A motherfucker got on the bus in New York and kept driving towards me. I saw it from there until that last 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 25 minutes, where it goes so batshit crazy that I was having a great time. So, that being said, I don't know if this is a good film. I don't know if this is a bad film. And upon second viewing, I still don't know. What is interesting to me about this film is the lengths to which it goes to really shine a light, or to one thing that I was wondering, and I wondered what you thought, without knowing if this was directed by a man or a woman during the initial viewing. I thought, this is either a very angry woman or a man who hates women, and I'm not really sure what it is. What's your opinion? Let's open this motherfucker up and see where, what we can convince each other of.
Okay. Well, okay, so then let's do what we typically do, and my place is always kind of like the same. So let's talk about the film, let's talk about our experience with the film, and then let's talk about our ideas associated with the film. That's primarily what I'm usually interested in anyway.
Sure.
And not necessarily in that order. So first of all, I think this is a story that's pretty much Aronofsky. I think it's an Aronofsky type of story, which means it's a story of one person's self-destructive tendencies, right?
Yeah.
It's a story that's pretty much Aronofsky in a genre that's basically Cronenberg, meaning body horror, with ideas attached to it, in a style that Nicholas Winding Refn, I think, could have done better, in terms of the superficiality of the world that he's creating, and also like the look of it, with moments of Gaspar Noé at the end. So I mean, that I saw that as a huge influence.
There was a lot of Gaspar Noé in
when we get to the end of the bloodiness, the goriness, even that title card that says like Monstro in the Dessous or whatever, that's a fucking Gaspar Noé like thing, and the music, and so there's a lot of stuff to play with this film. Angry Woman versus Man Who Hates Women. Let's get back to that.
Did you get that sense though, or is it just something that I'm imagining?
That's not something that I got from watching the movie.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get a feel for that. Now that you say that, I would say, well, is this the condition of fucking Hollywood?
Yeah.
That it is run by men who hate women, and that it's not only angry women who, on some deep-seated level, that are participating in it, but angry actors in general, probably. But let's also, let me also digest that and kind of think about it as we discuss. This is, I don't know this director either. I had seen the trailer for the other film, Revenge, right?
Yeah.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah. I think it's set in the Australian outback or something like that. It's a desert film.
Like that. It's basically like a I Spit on Your Grave type of woman gets raped, woman comes back, kills everybody type of thing. Mm-hmm. And we've talked about the Peck and Paw and the what's his name? Carrie director.
De Palma.
To Brian De Palma.
Mm-hmm. Which this owes a lot to. A lot.
I mean, it's just the subject matter. You know what I mean? Like, this draws from a lot of places. Again, body horror. Already going into it, body horror wise, like, you have stuff stacked against it, because at least I was holding it. I was like, well, okay, like, I'm thinking of Cronenberg, and it's fucked up to do that, but it just is. That's how I went into it.
No, there's a reality to it. Yeah, I mean, it's just, especially when you watch as many movies as we've watched, and we dissect them in the way we do, shit's going to come racing back at us, and there's going to be a point where you're like, oh, these are the waters she's swimming in. So okay,
exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
which is also like can be cool, because it's like, well, is it homage? I mean, you talked about with Tarantino. Here we go. With Tarantino, you talked about Pulp Fiction once. You said one of the things you hold against it is, or at least at that time, I don't know if this has changed. Doesn't
probably
matter.
The same. Yeah.
is that you could see the seams. And I'm like, my thing was like, well, yeah, but that's kind of what it's made to do. Like, it's made in that. This is one of those where you could also see the seams. And I think that there is a lot of homage in that as well. And Tarantino is on that borderline as well of homage versus thievery, which is what it is. So with this, you could see a lot of like French New horror, French New Extremity horror. Again, Gaspar Noé, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. When you bring up the idea of, Tyler Durden, fucking Female Fight Club, that's a version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's a version of, we talked about this with Black Swan. We talked based on what that homage it paid to or stole from Perfect Blue. We've done that. There's a lot there. There's a whole fading starlet trope and tradition in Hollywood with Sunset Boulevard, Billy Wilder, 1950. Whatever happened to Baby Jane, early 60s. That idea of this character, Elizabeth Sparkle. There's the style stuff, the cinematography. Again, there's a lot of Refn that I see in there. There was also an aspect of that. I don't know if you ever watched it. It's like a middle brow, fucking almost nothing film called Limitless with Bradley Cooper, where it's like about the smart drug. There's an element of that where it's like, and I wondered when I was looking at the film, like not only watching it but looking at the what they're doing with the style and the cinematography. Is like, is it going to change? Limitless was kind of like drab in the beginning when it was showing how drab this character's world was. And then once he takes the substance in that film, once he takes that pill, the world opens up to him because now he's operating on all these levels or whatever. And I was like, well, already the film looks a certain way here, with its homage to fucking Stanley Kubrick's fucking carpet from fucking
Shining.
The Shining. I'm like, what is there something that's going to change not only what the characters that we see on screen, but the telling of the film through cinema itself? Is the cinematography going to change? Are the colors going to change? Is the color coding going to change? So I was already starting to criticize, and I was already saying this is way too fucking obvious. Because this character's name is Elizabeth Sparkle, and she's a star, and you have the Hollywood star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and she's a fading star, so the sparkle, like, you get it, guys? Like sparkle, like sparkle, get it? And then the star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, get this, guys, is splattered with ketchup. What do you think of that? Like a foreshadowing, guys. Like, what do you think of that? Amazing, right? Foreshadowing, like splattered, and then we get blood later. Like, so I was hearing that kind of moronic voice in my head about someone like, I don't think this was made by committee, and I don't think people were throwing around like wadded up balls of paper and going like, "You, what do you got? Star splattered with ketchup, blood. Got it. Okay, cool. Move on. Let's write that down. Boom." I don't think it was that, but I think the inner demons of this woman were probably, or whoever wrote this piece, like, we're doing that. And I said, like you could see the bus coming from fucking New York. You know what I mean? It was like, come on, like, Elizabeth Sparkle, like, really? What, like, okay, the billboard of her face is torn. Again, obvious. Even down to, like, when she's drinking and they show the lined up martinis.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I'm going to show up 4 or 5 martini glasses empty. And guess what, guys? That means she's drinking. Yeah. We've all watched movies. We understand that. That means she's drinking. That means she's drunk. And then I'm going to show you her throwing up, because that means she's drunk. And now, like, she's on that part of having been drunk. And it's like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, now she's ready to make bad decisions too. She's really, she's at a low point. Yeah,
I get it. And she's won all these awards, so we have to show all the awards that she's won. There's that. Then there's the snow globe, because you have to have a fucking snow globe, because this is her fucking Rosebud moment, you know, like, and we all want to know what's going on with her, even though we already know what's going on with her. She's a fading star whose name is Elizabeth Sparkle, whose fucking star got splattered with ketchup, who's now holding again the snow globe with the golden snow, and behind her is a fucking large ass fucking portrait of herself. And guess what's gonna happen? We all know she's gonna fucking throw that snow globe against the picture of herself, and guess what happens? It happens.
Yeah.
So there's all that. It shows too much. It was showing too much.
You also forgot one that I liked.
Which one did you like? The substance in the trash, when she throws it down and you see the angle of the fucking like.
No, when you open up on Dennis Quaid at the lunch table, right before you see him slurping down the shrimp. There's a close-up shot of a fly on the back of his neck. He's a piece of shit.
Right.
You know, so
that's good. That's a good one. That's good, guys.
Let's do that. You know what I mean? I'm sitting there. I'm like, okay.
On the turn. Yeah. And he's predatory. He's slippery, but he's also like a bottom feeder. You know what I mean? And yeah, of course.
It's all fucking obvious. It's all obvious. Yeah.
It's not even like, that's not symbolism. That's just fucking obvious shit.
Yeah.
So, having said that, is all of this just her doing a sleight of hand on us? Is she luring us into a false sense of security just to get us to the fucking end of this shit?
Well, she's taken a long time to do that, though, you know?
She is.
You know?
She is.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, like, was the ending an accident? Was it just something that, like, it just... And let's back up.
Mm-hmm.
Let that question hang in the air, and let's just back up. What's the fucking premise? And then we can get into the ideas, and then we can set it all up. So the fucking premise of the movie is what? The premise of the movie is an aging starlet. She just turns 50. And there was something about this movie that felt... it was interesting because it felt contemporary, but at the same time, it felt very 90s to me.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure exactly why, other than like, is it because it's this workout person? And it was just kind of like, at our age, when you see that, you're just kind of like, I mean, that brought out a lot of stuff in and of itself. It was like, okay, workout person of us, and if you're of a certain age, you think, okay, Jane Fonda, right? But then that also reminded me of Bridget Fonda. And so that's the niece.
Yeah.
And she was in the 90s. She came out. She was Point of No Return. She was in that Tarantino,
Jackie Brown.
Mm-hmm. She was in other stuff. And then rather recently, within the last few years, I don't know if you've seen pictures have come out of her. Cause it's like, what happened to her?
I hate to beat her up on that, but it does come out in your head. It does play back. You can't ignore that.
Yeah, because like the fucking webs of bullshit that I have in my head like took me there, and so I was like, oh, okay, Jane Fonda, okay, by association, Bridget Fonda, 90s versus now. There are pictures of Bridget Fonda now where she looks not like how she did before.
Well,
you're like, that's Bridget Fonda. She's overweight. She just looks. Here's the thing. When you see it on a blog or you see it in some, like how you would see back in the day, the Star magazines where they would show, or People or whatever, they would show like celebrities looking like shit, like on the street.
I remember those, yeah.
It's like, well, what happened to fucking Bridget Fonda, like, in terms of her career, but also in terms of her body and her looks? Well, what happened to Bridget Fonda is that she got old and she now looks like a fucking normal, regular fucking person.
Yeah.
Like, that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she's overweight. That means she looks like a fucking regular person from the street. You know what I mean? Like, no one cares until you make it a thing because it's like, oh my God, oh my fucking God,
Yeah.
that's Bridget Fonda. She looks like shit, right?
Yeah.
That's the delivery of it. So anyway, so I'm watching this and then I'm thinking also 90s, okay, Jenny McCarthy, all this kind of shit. Like, she's like one of those workout women. She turns 50, and so you have, and we're going to come back to this, but of course, the fucking elephant in the room is Demi Moore. So Demi Moore is like 60 or 61 years old,
Yeah.
playing 50, which is already something. That's already like interesting in and of itself. And she turns 50, and so basically, it's like time to go, you know, like put her out to pasture type of shit.
Yeah.
Take her out behind the barn and shoot her type of shit.
She doesn't start. She reaches the point of unfuckability. Although, I mean, she's a good-looking 61 in this movie, but it's a telling thing. It really, and I wish something more like, I wish that had been explored more, I guess. But they take it in they take it in a different direction. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean that goes into and we'll get into these ideas of that,
Yeah.
and how our society views in Hollywood and all of that. But in the meantime, okay, so she reaches this point, so then it's like, as she's dealing with this fucking like career and fucking life crisis, she's driving and fucking like she sees them taking down a billboard of her, and they just tear it right across her face. She gets into a car accident. Okay, now she's at the hospital, given this hint, given this little advertisement, zip drive of this thing called the substance. It's like this fountain of youth thing. It's, what if you could find a new, better, sexier version of yourself? She explores it. The thing is, you take it, and what happens? A new version of yourself emerges from you. So you have your original self, and I'm spoiler alert, whatever, for the 5 of you who are fucking listening, I don't care. Your back fucking opens up, literally, like this big fucking crack, this big fucking cleavage along your spine, and a hot chick comes out. And it's not like young Demi Moore. It's like with the same DNA, but it's a different person.
Yeah.
So I guess, like a fraternal twin sister or something like that. So like she pops out, and the thing is, you can only have one. So there's like the original self and there's the new self, which is younger, hotter, better, all that. Only one can be active at a time. So in this package that comes from the substance, you have like the serum that you originally take in order to start this process. You have some kind of like IV fluid that's basically like the food that keeps the whatever self is asleep like alive. And then you have a syringe where the new self has to extract like spinal fluid from the fucking old self in order to stabilize itself every day. And every 7 days you have to switch without exception. So 7 days on is the new self. 7 days on is the old self. And so that's the price you pay to have this new self, is that like you still have to live as your old self for every other week. But somehow it's like you're one. And you are not allowed to fucking like, you must without exception switch off. So automatically you know that that's not going to happen. Because the young self is stupid, because the young self is young. And the young self is ambitious. And so the young self is successful. So the young self is like, I need more time. And every time you take more time, there's payment that comes out on the other side of the balance, means that the old self gets older and more disfigured, while the young self sustains itself by going longer than 7 days. So that's what happens. Ultimately, it's a battle of the selves. And what you don't ever see, where I was like, how the fuck, like, this is what I was thinking. I was like, I would have been YouTubing and Googling, like, how to fucking, like, this chick is, like, sewing up Demi Moore's back, fucking injecting herself, doing all this crazy shit. And it's like, that part was too easy. Like, med student shit. But whatever, it's a movie. So that's the premise. And ultimately, the cells battle it out, and the message of the film is that Hollywood makes both stars and monsters and destroys them. The moral of the story, basically, is that, be careful what you fucking wish for and what you're willing to do in order to so-called, like, stay young and beautiful, because ultimately it can make you more ugly. And that's something that those same fucking magazines that talked about would talk about Bridget Fonda or people like her are the same ones that are going to talk about or would talk about Michael Jackson fucking surgeries or botched fucking whatever person's facelift and all this and that. Like, it's the same thing. Once we get into the ideas of it, it's like, well, what are these views of aging? You know what I mean? Like, especially for women. And if you look at, like, are you still there?
I'm here. I'm listening.
If you go back to, like, pagan and traditional, like, old ancient societies, tribal societies, it's not this fucking our modern fucking Hollywood version of, like, what it is to be the cycle of man and woman. I mean, like, you have this idea, I don't know if you've heard of this, of maiden, like maiden,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
young woman, maiden, mother, and crone. The maiden is spring, it's fertility, it's virginity, the young woman, vibrancy, energy. Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
The mother, the harvest, the one who runs the household, sexual power, the boss bitch, that energy. The crone is the winter time. The crone is the wisdom, the matriarch, the abuelita, like the coco, you know what I mean? Like, that's the one that there's reverence, respect. In traditional societies, each of these, whether you have kids or not, even if you're in the mother phase, like, you can also be symbolically a mother in terms of, like, you're a leader of other women. You're a leader of the
like the older sister, that kind of thing. Also, in some sense, yeah.
Yeah. Yes. These are also the women that, I mean, in a traditional society, you wouldn't run a company, but these are also women who are like, they're running something, and their opinion counts. I'm talking about, like, in tribal type of situations.
Yeah.
Each has a time, a place, a role in society. In men, you can think of, like, the archetypes of, like, knight, king, and then wise man. Versus, like, obviously that sounds foreign to us. Maybe in some, I mean, it's also in some societies, like, even, like, in Spanish-speaking cultures, like, that makes sense. Like, you think of, like, the role of grandparent, the role of grandmother.
Yeah.
And you have that in the household a lot of times, where you'll have the daughter, the mother, and then the grandmother. I mean, Disney movies a lot of times now are, like, featuring this stuff. That one, I don't even, what is it called? The one where it's the tree and the family, they're magical and all that, and it's the generational trauma. Do you know what I'm talking about, that movie?
Is it a Pixar movie?
And it's called Encanto. Is that what it's called?
Oh, Encanto. Yeah, they came out during COVID, so didn't get a release.
So
yeah,
it means enchantment.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one to reference, like, the different roles of, like, aging within the family and aging in life, and how each has its role and how it affects the other. Versus and I don't know if this was Lauren Bacall or who it was, who said something to the effect of, men get older, women get old.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the evolutionary psychology view, which is that, okay, beauty and youth equals, it's just a marker of fertility. It's all about health and fertility. And it's all about mating and power and all that stuff. So it's like, so-called, for men, any kind of creativity or any kind of like ability or whatever, it's just a version of antlers. It just seems like it's just to show that I'm a good mate, potentially. Men's value goes up with age because they can gain status and resources over time. Women's value decreases with age because it's just measured by fertility.
Yeah.
So like, especially like the whole J.D. Vance and all those right-wingers that are like, well, it's all about women having white babies. Like that's it. That's what it's about. That's it.
Yeah.
So, but then there's a weird thing that goes with that, which is like, unless, and we've talked about this with Diploma, we've talked about this in film, like, and then recently rather recently with the rise of like MILF porn, which is like, I guess since the 2000s that it was even called that. The Mrs. Robinson fucking thing.
Mm-hmm.
Can a woman's age be fetishized? Then that creates not just the dichotomy between like what you said, like, oh, fuckability versus non-fuckability. Yeah. It creates three ages. And I think John Ronson it was either his podcast or it was some other one that talked about this weird situation within pornography, especially in the realm, like once like OnlyFans came out, which it drove a lot of women into that, because in the porn industry, it created like three brackets in terms of age. It created like the super young ones, so the bare legal, that's the schoolgirl, babysitter, stepsister, all that shit. And then on the other end is the MILF, the nurse, teacher, stepmom, Lisa Ann, Sarah Palin, all that.
Mm-hmm. And
then in the middle group of women, those are the women that are kind of like, they don't have a place. Because...
Well, they used to be the standard.
Right.
They were the Chasey Lanes, the Jenna Jamesons, the mid-20s to maybe on the cusp of 30. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's kind of like, if you're older, but you can fit that fetishized role, then, all right, now we're going to cast you as this. If you're young, all right, we already know what we're going to cast you as. If you're in the middle, then you're not as easily defined. You're just kind of middle brow type of shit. And it's like, we don't have a fetish for you right now. So you better figure it out. You better do the black guy thing or the anal thing or the lesbian thing or whatever you need to do. Figure it out.
Yeah.
And so it's crazy. And if you're going to be older, you better still be fucking hot, basically. But you better be older hot. So then that brings us back to like Demi Moore. And it's crazy because it's like Demi Moore is such an interesting casting because of all the baggage, the history of Demi Moore.
I don't know if anybody else could have done the part. Not acting wise. Acting wise is one thing, but what she brings to it, yeah, definitely.
I mean, the way in The Wrestler, which The Wrestler is a male version of this, which it's like, and we've talked about this, pornography and wrestling. It's like these people who die young. They fucking die of all these fucked up causes. They use and abuse their bodies to such a degree because of their extreme versions of performance. It reminds me of Marissa Tomei in that film, where she's playing this like still hot but like older stripper.
Yeah.
Or I think of maybe a Jennifer Connelly who you can look back at her career and you're like, super like innocent fucking like roles and looks, the way she's filmed, but also to see her like in Requiem for a Dream, highly sexualized, fucking like and then to see her like aging, you know what I mean, and like to see her in the Tom Cruise
the Top Gun remake, and the reboot,
which is the sequel basically. And it's another male version of that, where it's like the young guy got old, and interestingly, like that woman from the first Top Gun is not in Top Gun 2, you know?
But why?
Because of what we're talking about.
You've seen her though, right?
Yeah, I have seen her.
She's very heavy. She's very old.
We talked about this.
Yeah, we did
before.
Yeah,
and that's what it comes down to. Beetlejuice 2, Winona Ryder. I'll go back to Black Swan. Winona Ryder plays the older, like, one that's getting thrown away. In Beetlejuice 2, Winona Ryder's older, but it's just kind of like she's just older Winona Ryder.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that
because they're dressing her the same, you know. She's elevated as the mother character. This new ingenue is brought in. It's a weird. We're going to talk about that in a couple of episodes from now because it's its own thing. But there is this sense of women being thrown away. I mean, it's not even a sense. It's a very real thing in cinema where you're used to a degree and then you're thrown away. But there's a part of me that's just like, well, that's the business. And if you don't know that going into it, if you're a Julia Roberts, if you're a Raquel Welch, let's go back to the names. If you're a Sophia Loren, you know that at some point that train is going to come to a halt. If you're a Kathy Bates or a Meryl Streep, you know that you got a lot more road ahead of you.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that, like, the cynical, miserable asshole part of me has no sympathy for a Demi Moore because maybe it's my own prejudices that I'm bringing, and this is where this is how we open this thing. There's a certain level of prejudice against attractive women, and you. This is where you can easily call me one of those, what do you call them? Misogynistic, but the celibate, not by choice. Incel? Yeah, you could very easily call me an incel on this, but there is a part of me that I could give a fuck about a beautiful woman's problems when it's based on a woman who had nothing but beauty. That's a fucking genetic lottery that you won. You brought nothing else to it. You haven't developed anything. I've never thought that Demi Moore was an exceptional actress. There was nothing about her performances in any film that I've seen her in that I thought she elevated it because of the emotion and the psychological connection that she had with the character. There was nothing about those films that elevated the film itself or the film watching experience because of her performance. So when you see her in a film like this at 61, getting pushed out onto the ice floe, I don't have any sympathy. It's difficult to have empathy because it's such a foreign idea. I understand the idea on paper, and I see where you're supposed to be going with and the emotions and the connection that either a screenwriter or a director wants you to have with the character. But ultimately, and I don't know if you feel this way, there is not a likable character in this movie. And that doesn't mean that makes it a bad movie because I've liked films with completely unlikable characters. But the story itself is very basic, obvious, and uninspired. I don't see anything. I mean, she did She did a good role on a series called Tales from the Crypt back in the 1990s, where she played a money grubbing. Do you remember this episode?
It's I Can't Have You, Nobody Can, right?
Is that the name of the episode?
That's the one with the guy from the diner, right?
The dad from the diner? What dad from the diner?
The guy from the diner, is that the one where the guy from the diner kills her?
He's a fat man. He was already a fat man, but he was like amped up. There was a lot of prosthetics, and she goes to a gypsy, of course, who predicts her future, that she will inherit, or that she will marry rich, or she will become rich, or something like that. And I might be mixing them. Yeah, I remember that. I remember it. I don't know if that's the diner episode with the cleaver, but I remember I don't recall, but that's the episode, and she was good in that. Yeah. But it was very base, and maybe it was something that I saw in her, and certain prejudices that I have, whatever, I don't know. But like with this Elizabeth Sparkle character, I didn't care until she started to get what she deserved. For me. Maybe that's a wrong way to say it, but I kind of feel like, the way we described it, the way I talked to you about Creepshow too, it's like you kind of want to see bad things happen to these people. So when it starts going off the rail, and it's not like I didn't see her as being old, but the lengths that the director went with the makeup, there was a moment where Margaret Qualley's character decides to just drain her of every bit of fluid that she has so that she could prolong. She goes on a fucking 3-month spree, and she destroys the Demi Moore character, the Elizabeth Sparkle character. So when Elizabeth Sparkle comes out of it, she's this grotesque old crone, just fucking...
on track.
That was the first laugh of the movie, though. Because for me, when she's struggling through the hallway, there was a moment where her sagging tit falls underneath her armpit, and I just started laughing. Yeah. And this is the part that bothered me, is that's the point where I started to realize, well, maybe this is a comedy. And it wasn't a comedy before, but it starts becoming a comedy, and by the end, it's a flat out comedy. Right. But the audience was so uptight about it, and we're either unsure of how to react. But it was one of the only times in a movie where I felt self-conscious about my own laughter. Like I was like, if I let this go too far, I'm going to get thrown out of here. Oh, because of the way I laugh. Yeah. Well, so there's that. But I was screaming in my head. I was screaming. I was stifling myself. At one point, I bit my forearm because I didn't want to let it out. I was fucking dying. It was. That's crazy. Yeah, because it. Were you a self-censor on that level? Because I knew otherwise I was going to get thrown out. Well, I mean, let's keep going with this more thing, because it's like the to me, it's like. I don't think she's this great actor. I think a lot of time her career has been based on it's the roles. It's the roles that she's gotten and the roles that she's chosen. Yeah, that's what's more like G.I. Jane, fucking Striptease, Indecent Proposal. Yeah. You sent me a clip where she's talking about in that era, fucking like having a kid, fucking riding a bike 30 miles, fucking because she put herself through that, and she's like, yeah, that's what Hollywood wanted me to do, like they wanted me to be that person. So but these are the lengths that I went to. But the bravest part of that statement, though, was she said, I did this to me. Right. That was the moment that I really started to admire her a little bit more. She was like, I did this to me. I don't look back on it as being the victim. And basically she was saying she was the victim to herself. She allowed them to do it to her. And I thought that took a lot of, because I have a love-hate relationship with Hollywood to the degree of, I think Hollywood is unjust for the requirements that it puts on its actors, actresses, but at the same time, you do that to yourself when you go into that industry. So when I've heard people say, oh, she bounced back from her pregnancy and she's such in great shape, and or they talk about Halle Berry at 40-some years old. And I was like, well, what fucking choice does she have? Her beauty is her selling point. Once the beauty's gone, you don't turn into Meryl Streep. You know?
Right.
At the very least, and this could be this could be interpreted as misogynistic, and maybe it is misogynistic. I don't know. I'm a man talking about female opportunities in Hollywood. I'm part of the fucking problem. I get that. But it doesn't change the fact that you sell your soul to the machine in order to get what you want out of it. I've told this story in the past where I was at the Comedy Store in 2001, 2002, and this is the point where right before the Playboy Girls Next Door show was on with Hugh Hefner and the Three Idiots. Before that, he had 7 or 9 idiots, blonde, airhead morons that he would flaunt. He would take around town and flaunt like he was some stud, like he was some 80-year-old stud who could still get a hard cock and fuck these chicks like a teenager. And it was at a time when people were like, oh, Hef, he's got the fucking life. All this shit comes out a decade and a half later about the violence and the misogyny and the abuse that occurred at the Playboy Mansion, and Hugh Hefner, who I will go to my dying days as calling a fucking pimp, a scumbag. He's vilified after his death, where there's nothing to be said about these women who were complicit in their own victimization.
Well, yeah, I mean, and,
you know what I mean?
And even Hugh Hefner was a victim of his own fucking having to be trapped in that role of like,
Yeah.
oh, I have to pretend that I'm still a fucking like this virile fucking like character.
Sex machine, yeah. This thing that I've created, you know.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like I'm not this big fan of Hugh Hefner. I do think that Playboy magazine had an impact on society that was. You would
be a fool not to believe that. You'd have to just recognize it, but there's good and bad with everything.
But even like going back to Demi Moore.
Mm-hmm. Well, it all comes back to Demi Moore because it's all part of that same thing. Continue, please, and I'll chime in when I can.
Just like the fucking forum when you can, you know.
I'm doing it.
Like you're not only watching, again, when you watch something and you've watched enough shit, like you're not only watching what you're watching, you're also, I mean, I'm also watching her and I'm thinking about Bruce Willis and his age-related fucking, like,
dementia and everything, or whatever that is,
I'm thinking about, this is also Demi Moore, who after, like, broke up with Bruce Willis was fucking dated and was involved with a fucking much younger fucking Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about Demi Moore with that fucking Vanity Fair early 90s pregnancy cover.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention, you know, we already talked about striptease, like we did mention striptease, indecent proposal, all that.
Yeah.
It's also like Demi Moore, it's interesting on top of all of this other stuff that they cast her and but look at who I talked about. I said maybe Marissa Tomei, Jennifer Connelly, okay, Demi Moore, who got the role. All these women are still considered attractive for their age.
Mm-hmm. For their age. That's a nice little asterisk that you put by it. Not you. Well, I'm just telling you. You know what I'm saying.
It is true. Mm-hmm. I mean, they don't look like the way they used to look, but they're still attractive.
Yeah.
It's not like they cast someone that you would say was attractive and then now this. I mean, part of that is built into the premise is that you have a person who maintains their level of fitness. Character maintains her level of fitness and attractiveness. The only thing is that she's aging out of what they consider to. Now it's just kind of like, yeah, you're still hot for your age again, but at the same time, it's kind of like, fuck, Demi Moore is still 61 playing 60.
She's 61 playing 50, and she's quite attractive at 61. But there's also that pessimistic, cynical side of me that says, well, what else is she doing? What else does she need to do? You need to maintain that machine. If you want to continue working, if you want to, because that's what she brought to it. I don't know of a film that she did that wasn't, that didn't glorify her body. Even with G.I. Jane, which is supposed to be this statement on female empowerment and, the equality of the sexes, a lot of it was the physical shape that she got into and the remnants of the femininity. Yeah.
That was a big, like, fucking, the shaving of the head is different for G.I. Jane than it is for fucking Full Metal Jacket. The guys in that one. There's so much symbolism there. You know what I mean? Like, and I mean, obvious symbolism. And if you think of, like, you mentioned Julia Roberts, in August Osage County, that was probably the first film where I was like, oh, Julia Roberts, like, this is a much older Julia Roberts.
Yeah.
But of course, Julia Roberts still has the benefit. I mean, she's Julia Roberts. You can argue whatever you want about her acting. She was good in that role, and she's gotten stronger over her career.
Well, she has gotten stronger in her career, and let's be honest, she decided to go toe-to-toe with Meryl Streep.
Yes.
And I give her mad props for that. Yeah, much better off for it. I mean, you cannot take anything from her. At the very least, she was great in it. It was the best thing that I ever saw her do, and she was. Right. I've enjoyed her work in other films, but I never thought she was exceptional. I never thought that she was a draw that made me want to see the movie. Now, granted, August Osage County, I wanted to see Meryl Streep, but after seeing it, I walked away with a much greater respect for Julia Roberts. Not that should matter or would matter to her, but I know there was a lot of people, if they looked at it objectively and they watched that movie, they were like, God damn, she went in there and she went toe-to-toe with probably the best that there is. And she didn't embarrass herself. She actually did a great job. That's fucking amazing.
Yeah. But the thing is that, like, she's still attractive.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I mean, if you, regardless of what your standards are of beauty and all, like, you can still say that, like, on some level, most people are going to say she's still older but still attractive.
Yeah.
That's a benefit that already, like, most people don't have. Like, they're already, like, to be still attractive for her age, right? That Monica Bellucci, Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
Monica Bellucci, since whatever James Bond movie she came out in recent, like, within the last several years or however many years, and then Beetlejuice, it's an older Monica Bellucci, but it's still a fucking bad fucking Monica Bellucci, you know?
Yeah.
And they play that. So it's an interesting thing to see Demi Moore, where it's like, it's a weird perspective to see, okay, well, it puts you in this position where it's almost like the Brian De Palma thing, where he puts you in that position in fucking the Vietnam film.
Casualties
of War. Where we talk about, like, it's so fucked up what Brian De Palma does, and it's a brilliant move because it makes you complicit as a viewer. When it's time for the rape scene, like, he puts two women on camera, and it's like, you know that they're going to pick one, and then therefore you in your mind are guessing which one they're going to pick, and you're like, well, they're going to pick, and we've said it before, quote unquote, the pretty one, right?
Yeah.
Well, now you have a Demi Moore, which it's a weird, again, thing, because what kind of curve are you so-called grading on as a viewer when you have Demi Moore, who is still beautiful at 61, playing 50, who is still beautiful at 50 in the character. And then now it's pitting her against this much younger woman with this supple body and all this and that. And you're basically, as a viewer, or I mean, I don't know if a woman would feel the same way, but it's kind of like, as a male viewer, I'm put in a position where it's kind of like you're going like, well, which one would you pick? Which one is better? Which one is hotter? Which one do you hire the new younger girl, or do you keep Demi Moore? Because it's like they could have rebooted her fucking show. Yeah, her show looked like it was made to look like passe. But what do, right? And like, there's part of me that if put in that position, I'm like, well, I still pick Demi Moore because I still think she's like hotter.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other one is young, but the other one is like not Demi Moore. You know what I mean? So it's like it's weird to try to watch this thing as a person who's seen all kinds of films, and you get put in a situation where now you're applying these fucking whatever twisted standards of beauty that you have, and
well,
go ahead.
The problem with what you're saying is you're overthinking it. And I'm not saying I'm not
overthinking it. I'm just thinking it.
No. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying overthinking it as in overthinking the concept behind the movie. You're overthinking it in the sense of this is not what you're saying goes against the very idea of this movie. You're seeing the value in Demi Moore, like I do. I find her more attractive as well. I find, there is something about her that has a power. Your average man is going to look at and say, Margaret Qualley, young, supple, ass is exactly where it is. They're not thinking about all that other. They're not thinking about the life experience. You're looking at it more on a personal level, which is the way it should be.
Sure. But I think it's also that might also have something to do with the age of the viewer.
That's
you
true.
And I are of a certain age, you know what I mean? And,
yeah, but you also know older guys our age and older than us,
are going to they're going to go towards the younger.
Yeah.
I get that too.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't know. I think on the basic level, it's you're supposed to go take it for granted that the choice is going to be systemically. The choice is going to be with the younger woman. I get it. It's the same thing with. I mean, it's the same thing with fucking Top Gun 2 or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah.
It's about these aging dudes that it's kind of like you can't cut it anymore, man. And that trend within Hollywood, which is like to go now to the older guy has to give way to the younger. Fucking, Indiana Jones has to fucking retire. Han Solo has to die. Spoiler alerts left and right, you fucking pretenders of movie watchers.
We're not fucking up anything. I mean? They know.
Like, Karate Kid, fucking all this stuff that's fucking, but it's crazy that it's like, for the male character, it's his ego that is hurt. You know what I mean? Cause he just can't cut it anymore. And Clint Eastwood in Unforgiven, it's just like, he's just a broken man, right?
Yeah.
For a woman, it's like her fucking very body is destroyed. It's fucking like on a whole other fucking level.
Well, think about
it. For men, it's Morgan Freeman making jokes about fucking, I can't get it up anymore. I have to pee all night long or something like that. For Demi Moore, her body is completely destroyed.
Well, think about it though. It's the life. It's the living. It's the having 3 kids. It's the drugs. It's the alcohol. It's a lot of shit that's involved, and it's fucked up. And I don't mean to be a social justice warrior, but it is fucked up recognizing the expectations that we have of our heroes. And, you know, to see Clint Eastwood now breaks my heart. But there is an understanding and acceptance of he's not 60. That alone. He's not 60. He's 94. And with Demi, but the thing is, and this is where it becomes problematic in movie watching. You have Dirty Harry. And you have Dirty Harry all the way up until he's 50. You have Dirty Harry from 30 to 50. You have Clint Eastwood and Rawhide. Demi Moore, you have St. Elmo's Fire. You have Ghost. You have Striptease. You saw when she was perfect, or at least the perfection that we're sold because movies are magic. Movies are bullshit. It's hard to watch them age. It's hard to watch your heroes age on screen. And with Demi Moore, there are those out there that might have admired her acting, but for a lot of us, it's how attractive she was to us. So to see something like that, and that's a problem with us. That's not a problem with Demi Moore, but it is her problem because we determine the opportunities that come to her, which is one of the storylines that we're watching here. It's ultimately very fucked up, and it's very telling of the industry and what is available to people. I look at it now, and, you know, I was out there for a little over 20 years. Thank God I wasn't a woman, because you can't win either way. If you're an attractive woman, you're going to get eaten up. You're going to get pimped, basically. And you know, what's the iceberg slim? How many miles does a bitch have? Isn't that something? Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. But an ugly woman, how many opportunities does she have? How many does that? Well, ugly women have a lot of opportunities. Basic looking women, your regular looking women, they have to hit some kind of weird timing thing that sets you apart from everybody else.
As it is, just in whether it's podcasting or whatever the fuck it is, you have to hit some kind of weird timing thing to begin with.
Yeah.
And basically you have to be, in anything, you have to be so bad, either so fucking bad that it's like there's some kind of like, there's something about it that like, it's like American Idol auditions. They show the fucking worst one.
Yeah. Because that's the freak show. That's the spectacle.
Right. Yeah. And then they filter in the people that they've already chosen to pick that they're going to pretend that it's, now I sound like an election conspiracy.
I was going to say that, kind of like an election.
They already have scouted these people who've been playing their local bars in fucking Indiana or whatever, who are already like, maybe they're on the road to having like some minor record deal, but they're like, we're going to pretend to fucking discover you and we're going to really get you going. And that's how it is. And so, it's interesting that this film, it's interesting that it's making these comments on beauty and Hollywood and all this and that, but still in itself is casting Demi Moore, which is kind of like, well, I don't know what the alternative would have been because again, the character has to be someone who played by someone who has maintained a certain amount of fitness and beauty, but just for this reason, like the milestone of 50 or the mile marker or whatever of 50 is now, it's kind of like, oh, expiration date, get the fuck out, on to the next one. So now I'm interested in watching this other film to see what kind of like the level of ridiculousness, because once now we get into the horror, which is also, it's the horror of, you know, is that what it is? Is that fucking like women aging is both a comedy and a horror story. Like,
Well,
you know
wait a
what I
minute.
mean?
What's the other film that you're talking about?
The revenge film.
Oh, Revenge. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm interested in seeing what she did with that. The thing about it with this, it got to the point of such ridiculousness, and it disturbed me because the audience was so uptight. There was no laughter in that room. There was no moment of levity where the audience started to understand, oh, we've just switched gears. This is what the director is doing, and I'm confident, without a doubt, that this became a comedy. But it was such a weird kind of horror. Number one, it's a horror film. It's a body dysmorphia film, so that's a subject matter in and of itself that is problematic in the sense of trying to make fun of it for an audience at least. And I think there was a discomfort because the subject matter, especially now with the role of the recognized role of women in the media, especially after Me Too, Rose McGowan, Ashley Judd, all of these women that we have seen be a victim to the Hollywood monster. And not just Harvey Weinstein. I'm talking about the Hollywood monster that goes back way before that. Because this shit ain't new.
And that then you said that when it wasn't new, when we did the episode of Weinstein and all that other stuff.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about it during Babylon as well.
Correct.
This shit
and
goes
Babylon
back.
also features the Elephant Man.
Yeah, exactly, and that came out in this as well. I think there was such a shift in the tone that an audience wasn't ready for it, and I felt that if I let go with my true self,
you would be judged.
I would. Well, I was afraid of being judged, but I was afraid of them coming at me. No,
well, you'd become the monster.
I was,
at that point.
because when your favorite moment happened, I lost it. I lost my shit, but I couldn't let them hear it because it would have been too much.
Damn.
But I freaked out.
But Joe Rogan in me was like, "Oh, they fucking censored you, bro! Like
they did.
You canceled yourself.
They robbed me of my freedom to be the ridiculous."
Well, it's great. It's just, and I don't agree with that little inner Joe Rogan thing. I mean, on some level, I guess I do, but on the same time, it's kind of like, well, it's interesting because human beings and human behavior is so fucking like all over the place that it's like, had you laughed, would everyone have laughed? I guess it depends on the room you were in. It depends on the demographic of the people. It depends on, it just depends because there is a shift in tone.
Yeah.
What happens in the film is that, as we've said, her new self starts to gain all these. She replaces her old self in her job role as this like workout chick.
Yeah.
She gets all these opportunities. The luxurious fucking Weinstein-esque Dennis Quaid character loves her, for the time being.
Mm-hmm.
And so then she gets this opportunity to host this big New Year's thing or whatever, to be Ryan Seacrest of the night, and so she needs more time. So she needs to drain fucking Demi Moore, her old self, of all this fucking fluid and keep the riot going. So she's abusing the balance. It's not 7 days on, 7 days off anymore. It's just, this chick is just on.
For like 3 months. She drains her for like 3 months worth.
Yeah. Yeah, turns Demi Moore's character into Quasimodo, basically.
Yeah.
And now she's run out of fucking fluid. So she's calling this number the fucking the
The substance hotline, basically, the customer service.
Yeah. Where it's like, yes.
Yes.
And no matter what time it is, they always answer.
Yeah.
Which is funny because that's the only hotline that anyone ever answers.
Yeah.
Kind of like, you don't get any like, please listen closely because our menu options have changed. None of that.
This is being recorded for
quality of service
and training purposes.
Hold, as all our operators are currently taking other calls, and then the music. So no, yes, she's not respecting the fucking balance. There is only one, right? It's that. It becomes this Hal kind of voice where it's kind of like, I'm afraid I can't do that, Dave. So anyway, so she's fucked up. She needs something. She goes to the thing. She's to the studio. She's gonna record. Her teeth start fucking falling. Well, they're loose. So then, of course, what happens when someone has a loose tooth? They fucking decide to pull it out.
You gotta pull it out
because that's what people do. And then it's like, oh, I have another one that's loose, so I'm gonna pull that one out. And then you start fucking peeling off your fucking fingernails and doing like the fly and all that stuff. And so Cronenberg is probably chuckling, and then so she lives fucking in Hollywood up some hill, but she's able to get run home. So she remembers that she has some of the original serum and this is the new self that she had taken as her old self, the Demi Moore self, that you're only supposed to take once and discard. So she's like, I just need another better version of me that's even better than this one. So she fucking injects herself. So Demi Moore is fucking, at this point, Demi Moore they had already fought it out because at one point they're both awake at the same time, which is a no-no.
Yeah. That's crossing streams right there.
Space-time continuum, man.
Yeah, exactly. She kicks the shit out of her, too. She kicks it to a wall.
Yeah,
across a room.
So they have, like, Glow, the Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling fucking moment. If any of you remember that. So it becomes a fucking Tarantino fucking girl fight.
Mm-hmm. It does.
And so, of course, the young one beats the fuck out of the old one. But they're one. So now she's falling apart.
Yeah. You can't kill the self. You can't kill you can't kill part of yourself without dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she fucking so then the new one injects herself with that serum, so then a newer one comes out of the fucking new one. So now you have three.
Yeah, it's Carpenter. It's Carpenter, the Thing comes out of it. That's what I was thinking. Look, it was everything that it has ever occupied throughout time. It was fucking weird. Remember when that eye starts to change and it's like, it doubles?
It was kind of like altered state.
Yeah.
Started to get into that kind of shit.
Mm-hmm.
And so this fucking elephant man creature comes out. And then there's a fucking flash of this card on the screen of Super Gaspar Noé. It says like, Monstro fucking Elisa Super,
Yeah.
And I say it with an accent because that's how I read it, right?
Mm-hmm. Monstro.
Monstro Elisa Su. And so, it's this elephant man looking fucking creature. And so she's like, she's going to get ready to go to this premiere to host it. So it goes into now you have the dead Demi Moore character, you have the dead new self, or not dead, but like all fucked up, whatever, maybe dead, I don't know, because this isn't supposed to happen. She's on the floor. So now this monster who's a mixture of both of them with Demi Moore's face, like
growing out of her back,
lump in her back, trying to like mouth these fucking words.
Yeah.
She starts to get ready, so she puts on the fucking gown. And of course, I mean, it's all torn because she's like making it, she's forcing herself into it. Then she doesn't have ears. So if you've seen the Elephant Man, just picture the way they made John Hurt look like John Merrick. And she like pins these fucking like earrings like into the side of her fucking head. And I watched this at home because because of time constraints, I had to do a trial that I need to fucking cancel.
Yeah, exactly.
Bullshit, right? And so I fucking, I'm watching it, and then the whole neighborhood heard me fucking laugh at that point.
Wait a minute, you're forgetting something. You're forgetting something, and I can't believe you didn't catch it.
Before the moment I'm about to talk about?
Yeah.
What was it?
She puts the earring into the side of her head, right? Because they had no ear. She just stick it in the side of her head.
Yeah.
And she starts looking at herself in the mirror. And the theme from Vertigo starts to play.
Oh, is that what it was?
That's what it was. The Bernard Herrmann Vertigo theme.
That's great.
And I laughed my ass off there. I was already laughing at that point.
Oh, I missed it.
And I figured that nobody else got that because, you know, in a regular audience, how many people have seen Vertigo? Just, you know, assholes like you and me and the rest of these assholes that listen to this show.
Didn't catch it. Yeah.
You didn't catch it. Wow. Yeah. I'd go back to that moment if I were you just to hear it.
I just want to watch that whole scene.
Yeah.
And well, the part that got me was she gets this fucking hair curler. And there's like fucking like 3 strands of fucking hair on her head. And she curls, it's like one fucking thing, and she's like curling it. And so I'm picturing you in a theater losing it. Yeah. And so I'm like picturing you losing it and myself losing it, and I was just like, tears were just rolling up because I was just like, this is so fucked up.
Yeah.
And there was such care. That monster took so much care to, and the reason why I'm describing it as a monster is because, you know, I get it. On one hand, it's like, oh, that's so fucked up. Like, why are you calling that person or that being a monster? The film describes this as a monster. And the point of it being a monster is that it's the result of these monstrous extreme actions, right?
Yeah.
But that's the dichotomy, is that, as we will see later, this person, this being, does not see itself as a monster. This person just had no choice. This person was just born like that, basically, out of Sue's back, out of the other self's back. So I'll alternate between monster and third self in describing her. So this third self or monster, depending on how you do it, is curling this one fucking hair, and it's so fucking ridiculous that you're going like, what the fuck? Like, it's crazy. It really puts into question, like, the idea of, like, yeah, like dysmorphia and all that, because it's like, well, when a person looks so-called normal, but they see all this shit with them wrong, and they start to see themselves as monstrous, but then now you have someone who's been described to you in the title card of the film as a monster.
Yeah.
And it's trying to beautify itself. And you're just like, what the fuck? So then she's wearing the gown, she has the makeup, she has the whatever, and then she puts the cutout, the face cutout from the poster of fucking Demi Moore over her face and glues it or tapes it or whatever.
Well, it's weird because she glues it to her face, whatever that head is. It's strange that even through all of that, she's still somewhat cognizant that she has to keep an image.
Yeah.
So she has to do the best that she can with Demi Moore's face, a cutout of it, and then she puts lipstick on it.
Yeah. And it's the fucking cutout, and so it's like the monster with the superficial veneer of like this beauty thing, and then goes to the premiere and hosts it. So you have all of these topless like cabaret dancers. And they're holding in this position, waiting. And you have all of these, like, nasty fucking businessmen who are the shareholders of the fucking whatever entertainment company.
Yeah.
Then you have Dennis Quaid, and then so the third self / monster comes out, and everyone's kind of like they're not paying attention. It's just kind of like. It's like, did they notice her? Did the people who let her in notice? Like, what's happening? It's just kind of like. Then she starts to talk, or try to talk.
Garbled as it is, yeah.
Yeah, garbled. And everyone's like, what the fuck? And I don't know which happened first because it's all a blur.
It's all a blur at this point, yeah.
The fucking face, the Demi Moore cutout, paper mask or whatever falls, and then this woman, it was so fucked up. Like, it was funny, but at the same time, it, like, hurt me. Where she's like, it's okay. It's okay. And like this weird, like pained voice and garbled. And it did take me back to the Elephant Man, and it was like, oh, fuck, man. Like, this is what fucking, like, our society and our fucking, and I watched this the day of the fucking election because I'm going to fucking put that in there. You know what I mean? So it's like...
We're recording this the day after. We're recording this
the day, yeah. And some of the stuff that we're going to... At one point, you guys, you two guys listening to our are going to... I mean, we're giving you shit out of order. We're giving... but we don't care. So at one point, there's an episode coming about, like, Joe Rogan and fucking George Carlin, you know what I mean? Like, that's retrospective, whatever. So going back to this. So at one point, a breast comes out of the body.
I'm so glad that you brought this up. Yeah.
I mean, we've had different things, and this was, now that I say the breast comes out of the body, earlier in the film, a piece of a chicken leg had come out of the body, and then now going back to these women who are like aging but still like hot or whatever. It reminded me of Killer Joe with
Matthew McConaughey, the Friedkin film.
No. Yeah, no, I know. But
Gershon?
What's the name of Gina Gershon? Yeah. Another one that is kind of like sexualized early career, but still like considered hot, MILF, whatever.
Yeah.
It's just the chicken thing reminded me of it. So a breast comes out of the third self, Elizabeth Sue's body, and it like comes out. And it was interesting to me that the director made this choice, and knowing that she's a woman, I was like, oh, this is fucking interesting, because, and it was kind of like one of my favorite moments because of that was something to me that was like, it sent an interesting message.
Yeah.
And this person, she's French too, you know what I mean? And so like, this director. And so it was interesting. There's a woman in the audience in the film there with her daughter. And it was interesting that the breast coming out, the mother covers her eyes. She covers the eyes of the little girl.
Oh, I didn't realize that, yeah.
But she didn't cover the eyes for the cabaret, which I'm also like, what, you know, it's like, are you going to cover up Michelangelo's David because the penis is there? Like, no, it's nudity versus this idea of nakedness, right? But in this, it was horrific. It was this, and it was kind of like, oh, the body itself is horror. Not only the aging process is a horrific and comedic process, but also like women's bodies, but also like women's bodies aging as monstrosity. And it was just fucked up. And then it starts the super Brian De Palma / well,
wait a minute. Before you get to that, I saw it a little bit differently than you did. Because I saw it as her giving birth on stage to the only thing that they wanted, which was a tit.
Oh, that's good too. Oh, because there's an earlier part where he says, "Well, they're casting," and they're like, "Oh, I wish her kid could be in the center of her face."
Yeah, you know. So
I mean,
it's
there's
like
that
very
too.
it's a very um, blatant statement on. I mean, I like what I like. That's why there's a couple of different layers here. So, but I
Yeah,
saw that she was making that last attempt to give birth, to give them what they wanted, which reduced her to a tit. It was just a
yeah,
tit, you know.
that's
Um,
that's great. Yeah,
you know, it was crazy because it had an umbilical cord, and it was birthed on stage, but then it turns into De Palma, which was
yeah. It turns
fucking
into the
nuts.
Palma Cherry versus Gaspar Noé,
Hmm.
um, where now a woman gets up and starts fucking screaming, and then they're like, "Monster,
Hmm.
monster," and then it becomes from monster, and then it becomes, it's horror, classic fucking universal horror, where it's like, well, kill the monster, um, and then they attack, um, and they're attacking, and then it just becomes, then the music kicks in, and the fucking blood starts fucking, like, they start fucking fire hosing blood all over it.
It's crazy because it becomes so extreme that everything that has come before it takes on a comic tone. So the
Mm-hmm.
moment where I wasn't sure, is this a comedy? Now it makes sense to me completely. But the rest of the movie doesn't work for me. The rest of the movie is boring, but it was so extreme. It was so out there, but it was a lot of fun. And there was a part of me that was just dying in the seat because I couldn't unleash. I could not
That's
be,
fucked up.
I could not be who I am.
You were like, it's okay, guys. I am a monster too. Um, yeah, I mean, it's fucked up because
Yeah.
it's like, then it becomes kind of like the layers of complicity, like what we said with the Palma, going back to the Vietnam to Chinese War, because it's like, well, um, when you're making a film like this, making these statements, but then you're also using the so-called male gaze to, even when the woman is looking at herself, the second self, the new self or whatever, is looking at her own body, it's you're being shown her body on the screen from the perspective of like, oh shit, like look at those curves, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like that you cannot do anything but like look at those curves and admire those curves as a fucking like as a viewer. And then so it's like, well, you're talking about the complicity of the viewer. You're talking about the system as a whole. You're talking about the society and that interrelationship between the 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 companies that kind of like produce this stuff, the people who participate in the making of it, including the actors and the performers, and then the viewers. So you're doing all of that within the system itself, casting these people, casting beautiful people, and working to pretend to make them not as beautiful as they already are. Because even like there's nudity of Demi Moore, and Demi Moore, even as a 61-year-old, to me, I still found her attractive in a natural way.
Yeah.
Um, and and then there's that. Then you're like talking about now amping up the fucking like violence and fucking horror of it and the bloodiness. Therefore, saying that all of these people are drenched in blood. Therefore, they themselves are also complicit because not only do they have blood on their hands, they have blood everywhere. So it becomes De Palma, it becomes Carrie. It's like they're all laughing. You're laughing too. The viewer's
Mm-hmm.
laughing. But then it's crazy because now the viewer in the theater, I was at home. So I was like, I had no fucking like, there were no social fucking like boundaries there. I could
Yeah.
react however I wanted. And in a social environment, now it's kind of like you have to play that game of like, how are you going to take this? Because in one crowd, some people are going to laugh, some people are going to get offended or whatever, and it's like, how many other people wanted to laugh but didn't? It's interesting. And then, so it has this peak, this crazy moment, and then, in a sense, it kind of fucking threw that away to me, because the what's left of this third self / monster like staggers away and then falls and fucking splatters all over the concrete, and then basically a fried egg. Then it went also Carpenter, because it was like, oh, this like looks like a practical effect. It looks interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It was just Demi Moore's face crawl just like as if you were to peel the layers of pepperoni and cheese off of a pizza,
mm-hmm.
and just have it leave the dough behind and just crawl like that, face up. It just crawls to her star on the Walk of Fame, and then it just kind of like dissolves. And then it shows the night turn to day, and someone just rolls over it with some cleaning thing, some machine that they use to clean the pavement. And I thought that was so fucking obvious.
Yeah.
And such a letdown that it would like, oh, I get it. It goes back to what I said before. Hey guys, okay, foreshadowing. It crawls onto the star, like if it was trying to find its home, or it was trying to find its last thing, or whatever. And it was kind of
the only place it felt comfort or the validation. Yeah,
the validation.
It was obvious.
Right.
It was obvious. I gotta say, from the time it becomes the monster until that De Palma tribute, that's the only time where it was original and inventive and swung for the fences and scary. And it was just like, it was out there. Everything else up to it, the political statement, the feminist statement, the slam on Hollywood and the industry, all of that shit was obvious. But for those 20 minutes of excess, I had a great time, and the movie itself was worth it because of that. I recommend the movie. I say you should see it, but with the understanding that it's like a really long joke that you can't see paying off. But when it does pay off, it pays off for that moment. It didn't teach me anything. It didn't help me understand anything. I don't think anything about it was exceptional, except to say that I have never seen a film take it to the extreme that this film did in that one section. For me, that was worth it. I don't know if it would be worth it for everybody. A lot of people would just be put off by that scene. But for me, it was great. I wish the whole movie had that kind of instinct for political commentary or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. I wish it had it.
And would it? The question also is like, would it have been able to sustain itself on that level for that amount of time? No, I don't think so.
It couldn't have.
I mean, certain things about it remind me of Neon Demon. I don't know if you're familiar with that film.
No, I don't know the film.
Reckon. It might be something you're going to hate it, but it might be.
Maybe.
I think so, because there's not enough story there, and you're going to say it's all style and not enough substance, which I think is like kind of like something that Reppin is going to get no matter what, because that's kind of his thing. So it reminded me of that. I also recommend it. Is it Angry Woman or Man Who Hates Women? I don't know if it's an angry woman. Then we need more of that in order to get those moments. Whatever it is that she's doing, whatever it is that she's reaching for, striving for, I want more of that so that we can fucking continue to get, because I was surprised. And it's like, at this point, being surprised, it was kind of like when I talked about House, and I was like, just the originality of it, whether you consider it, failure, however the language you want to use, you or me or anyone else, is like, the idea that people can still take risks and are still willing to do it and being allowed in this fucking system to make movies that do that, even if she had to be obvious, if that was and I'm not saying it was, but even if it was like, okay, here's the deal. You can have your little fucking 10-minute music video, but you have to dial it down for the other fucking 2 hours and 15 minutes. I mean, obviously too long, but if that was the deal, I think it was worth it because it did pay off for that moment, like you said. But it's like, well, maybe there's a way to Scorsese it in her next film where she can fucking go so extreme the whole way, where now she can dial it down to like extreme enough.
Yeah.
Or more extreme.
That's a good point.
Like,
yeah.
Who knows? But this makes me want to go back to more Gaspar Noé, more of that fucking stuff. His shit is extreme. It makes me want to see her first film.
If nothing else, I want to see the first film.
Yeah,
definitely.
I mean, and it's been a long time coming that we've been wanting to talk about it makes me want to also, speaking of Gaspar Noé, that rape scene from fucking Irreversible.
Yeah.
Because we've been wanting to talk about, going back to De Palma and all that. It's like the woman in trouble kind of thing, abused women, like violence against women in cinema.
Yeah.
Not that it makes me want to watch that in terms of like the way it sounds, but it makes me want to discuss and really dive into.
If we got to sit through the shit to have an open and educated discussion about it, then we have to sit through the shit. I don't want to watch. I have no desire to watch I Spit on Your Grave. But if we're going to talk about this, I don't see how we cannot.
Right. And then it's complicated in cinema history when you have like whether it's Hitchcock or any of these other people who are portraying it and it looks beautiful.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like where you see something ugly but it looks beautiful in the way that it's filmed. That's where we're living in these places at these crossroads where it's kind of like things are not easy. Cinema shouldn't be easy. Cinema's fucking nuts, and it should be.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here. So, good, bad, or indifferent, good, bad, or ugly. You want to donate. You can. If you can't, you can't. You don't, whatever it is. buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos. This one goes to Slim. Thank you very much. We're going to continue for as long as we can talk about things without our new king fucking coming after us.
That is true. Hey, I want to say thank you for those who have contributed, and this is in no way a slight to them. You give from your hearts and your soul and your pocketbooks, and that's a great thing. And for those of you who don't give, I understand. But also remember that art doesn't exist in just for the sake of art. A lot of times it needs to be funded. And we've always said that we're going to do this show for as long as we are able. But if you're listening and we brought you joy, if we've opened your mind up to attitudes about cinema and pop culture and literature and music, if we've shown you something that you didn't recognize was important to you before, and you realize now it is important, if we helped you along that journey, we would appreciate anything that you can give us. Go to buymeacoffee.com/WatchRickRamos and you can make this possible, even for just a little bit longer. Thank you very much. We will talk again soon.